My parents have always shown a soft spot for my older sister since we were kids. They constantly told me to back her up in everything. In my past life, I put up with it all quietly. But when it came to ditching my boyfriend, I just couldn't take it anymore. Out of the blue, they teamed up and ended my life, along with my unborn baby. In this new life, not only am I going to follow my parents' lead, but I'll also gladly hand over that jerk boyfriend to my sister. You're still young, right? What's the big fuss about passing this guy to your sister? The anger from being shoved down the stairs and losing my life with my baby was still fresh. And once again, that familiar high pitched female voice was bothering me. Could it be that even after death, I still have to deal with this crap? Enough is enough. I'll let him go. Is that cool now? I yelled like crazy. Smack! A slap hit my face, burning painfully. That screechy female voice got even more annoying. What do you mean? How dare you talk to me like that? I really regret having you, Mia. I wanted a boy to protect Ava. Why did I end up with a useless daughter like you? Feeling real pain, I suddenly realized I had been reborn. I looked up and saw my mother, her hair still dark, sitting beside my father, who was also younger, smoking with his head down, staying silent. Grief, resentment, and the joy of being reborn all mixed together. Tears streamed down my face as I quickly thought, I've already promised to let him go. Why are you still hitting me? Even the guy I like, you want me to give him to my sister. Can't I even feel upset about it? Seeing this, my dad finally spoke up. Mia, your mom was just mad because you yelled at her. You should try to understand her better. I quickly calmed down. After sorting through my memories, I mumbled with a heavy heart, Mom and Dad, you're right. Sister is fragile. I should support her more. I was just being stubborn for a moment. After all, Jake is someone I like too. Seeing things improving, their expressions softened immediately. My mom said fakingly, Mia, Mom believes you can find someone better. You're still young. Then she got up and went to the bedroom to rummage through things. After a while, she came out with a familiar box. Inside was a completely green jade bracelet. She said she'd give it to me as compensation. I happily took it. No reason to refuse. In my past life, I had given so much and even asked her for the jade bracelet, but she never wanted to give it to me. She always said, this bracelet is for your sister, because Mom originally wanted a boy to protect Ava. Since you're a girl, I can't give it to you. It was like this since we were young. If I didn't do as she wanted, she'd come up with excuses. She said because I wasn't a boy, she and Dad couldn't hold their heads up high in front of relatives. She claimed that since I was healthy as a child, I took away Ava's good fortune. They even left all the property to Ava. I didn't get a single penny, but I was so naive before that I actually believed her words and always felt guilty. After being reborn, I realized all their actions were just favoritism. Ava isn't a saint. She perfectly inherited our parents' selfishness. She'd been lying since we were young, always trying to put me down. Whenever she messed up, she'd frame me for it and pretend it was for my own good. I tried my best to defend myself, but as soon as Ava cried, no one believed me. She was frail and couldn't run and jump like I could, so her mentality was a bit twisted. Since we were young, whenever she saw I had something nice, she'd try to destroy it. But she also got almost all our parents' love. Isn't that enough to balance her mindset? The next day, I started feeding my family all sorts of info about Jake and promised to set up chance meetings for Jake and Ava. They didn't know Jake wasn't as sweet as he seemed on the surface. In reality, he was cowardly, incompetent, and selfish. A total mama's boy. Sending a useless jerk to mess things up for them and getting a genuine jade bracelet in return? Why not? I took the jade bracelet to get it appraised and then sold it for cash. The jade bracelet was valuable, but right now, money mattered more to me. The bracelet sold for 200,000 yuan. I spent some to have someone forge the transaction price. If they asked, I'd say the one my grandma left was a cheap fake. In the future, the useless guy would be given to Ava, and the jade bracelet would help me break free from these awful people. Oh, and lately, since being reborn, I had already moved out, saying I was too busy with work and the distance was too far, so I wouldn't have to deal with the three of them. Today, I arranged to meet Jake to return the umbrella I borrowed last time. Then I'll tell him I can't make it and ask Ava to handle it for me. After handling that, I was feeling great and decided to grab a bite. Coincidentally, I bumped into our neighbor's daughter. Seeing me alone, she shamelessly came over to chat and then just sat down to eat. Quickly thinking, I said cheerfully, "This meal's on me." She was a big gossip. In my past life, she helped Ava spread rumors everywhere, ruining my reputation even after my death. This time, I'll let her ruin Ava's reputation. I handed her the menu. "Here, order whatever you want." Seeing this, she tentatively asked, "Oh, Mia, something good happening? You're being so generous." "Not at all. I'm just out for a drink to kill some time," I replied with a lonely look. As we chatted, I pretended to be tipsy and exaggerated the story of my family forcing me to give my boyfriend to Ava and shared the details. She was all ears, getting more and more excited as she listened. When she left, I also gave her dozens of skewers of barbecue to take home to her family. I figured it wouldn't be long before the reputations of those three neighbors were as bad as mine was in my previous life. Jake reached out to me once. I straight up told him that Ava liked him and that all my previous actions were to help Ava pursue him. Because of my past life, I knew he could sense my feelings for him. He just didn't make a move and didn't reject me either. So this time, I directly pushed the excuse of being nice to him onto Ava. The one who can't get something is always restless. He's not an honest guy, he's just cowardly and fake. In my past life, without him covering for Ava, how could Ava have pushed me down the stairs and gotten away with it? I'd like to see if they can still be happy and content without me as the scapegoat. A few days later, when I went back home, I saw that my parents indeed looked unhappy. My mom yelled at me angrily. "What have you been saying outside? Now everyone's talking behind your sister's back. Are you trying to make your sister unhappy on purpose? I don't think you genuinely meant to give Jake to your sister. It was a waste giving you that bracelet. Give it back to me now. I'm going to keep it for your sister's dowry." Luckily, I was prepared. I pulled out the forged appraisal certificate my friend helped me with to retort, "The bracelet? Mom, how dare you ask me about the bracelet? Am I really your biological daughter?" I took the bracelet to a friend for appraisal, and they told me it was only worth 2,000 yuan. "I bet you only gave it to me because Ava didn't want it. I should have chased after Jake myself. Why did I have to do all this for Ava?" As soon as Ava heard me say I regretted giving up Jake, she got anxious. She probably realized that all the info I gave her was spot on, so she stayed on guard. She quickly acted like the good guy. "Dear sister, don't be mad at Mom. She did it for me. Don't be mad at Mom. She did it for me. It's my fault for being weak and useless. Don't be mad. The bracelet is yours." Even though we now knew it wasn't worth much, it was Mom's kind thought. She was in a hurry, but my mom still tried to argue. "That's the bracelet Grandma left. Whether it's valuable or not, you can't sell it. Besides, why did you get the bracelet appraised for no reason? Why did you sell it? It's a family heirloom. You unfilial daughter." As soon as I heard her mention this, I quickly replied, "I had some trouble with an investment a few days ago and owe a lot of debt. Do you think I wanted to sell the bracelet? If I wasn't short on money, why would I have resorted to such a desperate measure? Would you have given me money if I hadn't sold the bracelet?" When they heard that I not only regretted giving up Jake, but also owed debts, they didn't even dare to ask how much I owed. This was exactly the effect I wanted. I wanted them to avoid me. Otherwise, the bracelet would end up back in their hands again, but I couldn't help sneering inwardly with a hint of sadness. Why bother? Hadn't I already seen them clearly? It still hurt. They were my closest family, even though it was over now, being reborn. I didn't want to be drained of blood continuously. I planned to move my household registration out to make it easier to cut ties later. To do this smoothly, I used being short on money as an excuse and deliberately stayed home, pretending to be anxious every day, fearing debt collectors. In just a few days, they couldn't sit still anymore. They wanted to drive me away, fearing I'd bring non-existent creditors to the house. They dropped hints that I shouldn't burden the family, but I pretended not to notice and became even more slovenly, acting like I was eating and sleeping poorly and looking messy. My mom hypocritically said, "Mia, it's not that Mom wants to scold you, but a person should be independent. If you owe debts, you shouldn't burden your family. You should take responsibility for your own actions. If it really doesn't work, you can do some jobs to earn quick money. Anyway, you mustn't burden your sister. She's going to be Mrs. Jake. Jake's family owns a company. Yeah, he was originally a minor rich second generation in this area, but they didn't know that Jake's family was on the verge of collapse and was just an empty shell. I only liked Jake purely. After bugging them for a few more days, the three of them looked visibly worse, but they still didn't dare to drive me away openly. After all, I still had some value to exploit. Judging that the time was right, that day, I pretended to summon my courage and said to my mom, "Mom, you're right. One should take responsibility for one's own actions. To avoid involving the family, why don't I move my household registration out first and then move it back later?" My parents couldn't hide their joy when they heard this. They hurriedly got the household register and went with me to handle the transfer. But they still had to act reluctant and exchange a few polite words, which really made me feel disgusted. They couldn't wait for me to move out because they never intended to give this house to me. It was the same in my past life. They said Ava was fragile and left the house to her. I could earn it myself. After successfully moving out my household registration to make Ava feel bad and keep her too busy to notice me, I anonymously sold all sorts of info about Jake to others who had a crush on him. There were always some women around Jake. In my past life, he only chose me because he badly needed someone capable and gullible to help him manage the company. I just sold the info to make money. I gave them the opportunity. As for how angry Ava would be, I didn't care. Soon enough, I heard news that Ava had a fight with Jake. On one hand, it was feedback from the people who bought the info from me. On the other hand, it came directly from Ava herself. Sure enough, Ava called me asking for more info about Jake. She had actually been wondering all along. Even if I knew more about Jake than she did, how could she know so much? So she had been secretly on guard against me. How could she know that her dear sister had been reborn after being killed by her? But now she couldn't worry about those doubts anymore. She had to find a way to keep Jake's heart and drive away the other women. This time, I pretended not to know more about Jake's preferences and other details. Instead, I advised her to get pregnant before marriage. "Sister, I don't really know much about Jake either. I just liked Jake for a long time and inquired about him carefully from the people around him many times." Naturally, I knew more after gathering so much. With our parents not around, she finally didn't bother pretending to be a hypocrite. "I don't believe you. You must still be thinking about Jake and don't want to give him to me. Believe it or not, I'll tell Mom and Dad. I know they'll definitely side with me." Ava's high-pitched voice was exactly like my mom's, stabbing my ears so I had to take the phone away from her. Listening to her freak out, I was in a good mood and continued to speak softly and gently. But really, I'd already told her everything I knew. "Sister, if you want to capture a man's heart, you might as well have a baby with Jake. Once you have a baby, men will settle down. If you don't believe me, you can ask Mom. I'm sure she'll agree with me too. Moreover, once you have a baby, the baby will have the right to inherit property." I coaxed her patiently. I believed Ava wouldn't let me down. In my past life, she secretly got pregnant with Jake's child to secure her position. When she found out I was pregnant too, she pushed me down the stairs, killing both me and my unborn baby. That jerk Jake, to keep Ava's baby and fulfill his mother's dream of having a grandchild, actually conspired with my parents and others, insisting to the outside world that I had slipped down the stairs on my own and had me cremated and buried quickly. In this life, I also wanted to see if I could make Ava feel the pain of losing a child too. In the following days, based on memories from my past life, I analyzed stock market trends. Then I used the 200,000 yuan from selling the bracelet to invest in stocks and made a profit. Since being reborn, a plan had been forming in my mind. I had been collecting business info all the time and sorting out all kinds of business details from my past life. A few months later, I made my first pot of gold. Coincidentally, I heard that Ava was indeed pregnant. Without my help, Jake's business hadn't improved then, and his family was still declining. However, a lean camel is still bigger than a horse. I didn't dare to act rashly. After Ava got pregnant, Jake was extremely attentive to her, meticulously caring for her daily life and diet, hiring a nanny to look after her specifically, and buying her an apartment. But it was uncertain how long this attentiveness would last. Ava became complacent towards me after getting these benefits, as if she had already married into the Jake family. I kept working hard to make money, tried to build connections, and quietly bought myself a house. But not in this city. In another city. In this city, I still rented that old, shabby small house to live in. Although the new house wasn't big, it was in the best area of the other city and was about to be renovated soon. I didn't want them to find me easily in the future. I recorded all the important clients one by one and maintained good relationships with them so that it would be easier for me to survive after changing jobs. I continued to invest in stocks, kept collecting business info, and started making plans. Yes, I hoped that one day, sooner or later, I could start my own company. But starting my own company was still too slow, so I set my short term target on a rival company of Jake's. This was a small company that had just started. In my past life, it was this company that later caused a lot of trouble for the Jake family. It was only after I put in a lot of effort that I managed to compete with it and maintain the Jake family's status. If my memory serves me right, this company was currently facing a cash flow problem. I provided them with some money as an investment which didn't need to be repaid. After I'd almost prepared everything I needed to collect, I quietly submitted my resignation. In this life, I had almost no interaction with Jake. No one noticed when I left, and the resignation process went smoothly. For the time being, the news hadn't reached Ava's ears either. However, thanks to my funding, the rival company of the Jake family got through the crisis more quickly than before and was recently competing with the Jake Group for a project. Jake had been unable to secure this project for a long time. At this time, Ava actually turned her attention to me. Sister, there's a small problem with your brother-in-law's company. You need to do us a small favor. What a joke. What do you mean by doing a small favor? She wanted to send me to bed with the person in charge of this project. The person in charge was an old man over 50, known for his lechery. In my past life, it was only after I found other ways to handle him and negotiated and threatened him that I managed to finalize the project. Even then, I almost encountered something improper in the middle. And Jake didn't dare to say a word at that time. He even advised me to be patient and not offend people randomly, saying there was no real loss anyway. In this life, I took the opportunity to tell Ava, Sister, I've been investing in stocks and following others in making investments. I've recently achieved financial freedom. I don't need to work anymore. I already quit my job. Seeing that she had no way out, Ava got anxious and wanted to call me back home. But she couldn't do anything about me. After resigning, I directly joined the rival company of the Jake family and shared all the info that could help them secure this project. So this time, I was sure that no matter what efforts the Jake group made, they couldn't get this project. In my past life, this project was a big help to Jake. After completing this project, the Jake group regained sufficient funds and perfectly got out of the company's predicament. In this life, I'd like to see if Jake, still stuck in his tough spot, would still marry Ava. After some time, this project indeed went to the company I was working for, and the Jake group continued to decline. Ava was still indulging in Jake's kindness towards her, not knowing that the jerk was already having other thoughts. I heard all this from the clients who bought my info. Among these clients were quite a few young ladies from wealthy families. After all, Jake's face was really easy to like. I heard that the Jake family intended to form an alliance with her family through marriage. It seemed Ava didn't have a clue about it. However, it wasn't long before I received a call from my parents. Sure enough, they had learned from Ava about the news that I was investing in stocks. They were so greedy. How could they let me go? So they started asking me for money, completely forgetting that they had previously asked me to be independent and not burden the family with debts. They used to have quite a bit of savings, but after Ava started dating Jake, she began to spend money extravagantly. They actually thought Ava was sure to marry Jake. What was the big deal about spending some money? Anyway, once she married into the Jake family, there would be no worry about money. But now that Ava hasn't married into the Jake family yet, they naturally couldn't stand seeing me living a better life than them. I casually gave them some money and told them all about the benefits of stock trading and investment, how easy and effortless it was. And I drove my newly bought nice car to visit them at home. Although I only bought the car because I didn't want to pretend anymore and wanted to improve my life legitimately. They had always been overly confident and looked down on me. I believe they must have thought that if I could succeed in stock trading, they surely could too. Sure enough, they asked me to teach them how to trade stocks. Mia, you can't keep all the money to yourself. Was it easy for mom and dad to raise you for so many years? Besides, you're not a boy and can't protect your sister. Mom and dad didn't give you away like other families did to have a third child back then. You must teach Dad and me how to trade stocks so we can also make some money to spend. Or just give the money you made from stock trading to the family. When your sister marries into a wealthy family like the Jake family, she'll need a considerable dowry. Once your sister becomes Mrs. Jake, can she forget about you? I readily agreed and replied, I was just thinking the same thing, Mom and Dad. But you never believed me before. I was worried that you wouldn't believe me this time either, so I didn't dare to tell you. My mom's high-pitched and fake voice rang out again. Oh my, how could that be, Mia? You can't slander Mom and Dad. How could Mom and Dad not believe you? Mom and Dad were just always worried you'd do something wrong outside and cause trouble. That's why we've been so strict with you. All right, Mom and Dad. Is it okay if I teach you how to trade stocks? So I successfully led them onto the stock trading path and deliberately guided them based on the trends from my past life. Under my careful guidance, they initially made a lot of money, and thus they believed my words more and more firmly. I also deliberately guided them to make money. Of course, I had to guide them. How could they not make profits if they followed the trends? But on my side, I started to pretend to be broke, losing money in stock trading. Because I wanted to sever ties with them. I deliberately told them that I had bad luck this time and lost a sum of money in stock trading. Sure enough, they immediately turned around and mocked me, saying that I wasn't as good as Ava, not having the good fortune to spend money like her, and even if I did, it would only be temporary. Mia, it's not that Mom wants to scold you, but if you don't have the ability, don't envy your sister's life as a rich lady with money to spend. Look, what were you doing trading stocks? Your financial luck isn't even as good as Mom and Dad's. That high-pitched female voice I hated so much rang in my ears again. They seemed to have completely forgotten that it was they who had begged me to teach them stock trading, and they really thought making money from stock trading was all due to their own abilities. What a joke. Even in my past life, I didn't dare to invest in trade stocks casually, although I did pay attention to these things. If I hadn't had the advantage of knowing the stock market trends, I still wouldn't have dared to take the plunge in this life. Just the hundreds of thousands from selling the bracelet were nothing compared to what was needed. It didn't matter. My heart had already been completely chilled. I didn't care what they said or thought about me. If I hadn't known the stock market trends, I still wouldn't have dared to take the plunge in this life. Just the hundreds of thousands from selling the bracelet were nothing. This time, I had to stay away from them completely. So I continued to pretend to have lost money and kept losing. I even hired a few actors to go to their door to demand debts and cause trouble. It was their new home. Under my guidance, they had made a lot of money from stock trading and immediately moved to a big house. After that, I went home pitifully in the middle of the night and knocked on the door. When my parents opened the door and saw it was me, their faces immediately darkened. A mean and high-pitched voice rang out, "How dare you come back? Do you know that a few days ago, your creditors came demanding debts and asked us to use the house to pay off the debts?" Even Dad, who usually likes to stay silent, couldn't help but speak up this time. "Mia, how much debt do you really owe? We can see that this situation is quite serious this time. You're a girl. You'd better find someone to marry. Don't dream of getting rich every day. Look at your sister. Once she becomes Mrs. Jake, won't she have everything?" I wept bitterly and wailed, "Dad, Mom, I owe tens of millions from stock trading and investment this time. I really can't pay it back for now. I beg you to help me. I'm already homeless." As I said this, I knelt down and begged them. At this moment, the high-pitched female voice declared firmly, "We're severing ties with you. We want to cut off the relationship with you. If you had listened to your sister and been with that old man, you might have already become his second wife and enjoyed endless wealth and honor. And you could have helped your sister and brother-in-law's company get projects. But you didn't listen. It's not that we didn't give you a chance. It's that you didn't seize it. Don't come to us now that you're in trouble. We'll go get the severance of relationship notarized tomorrow. Just pretend we never raised you, and don't you dare burden the family." Although the severance of relationship document isn't legally binding, I believe they'd find a way to let everyone know it was all my fault, that I brought huge troubles to the family, and that's why they had to take this drastic measure. The next day, they informed a bunch of relatives and friends and severed the parent-child relationship with me in front of everyone. They embellished the story of my debt and added many wrongdoings that I clearly hadn't done, making themselves seem more aggrieved and me appear ungrateful. They didn't mention a word about how I had been doing all kinds of household chores and making other contributions at home for over 20 years, including the money I gave them, and later teaching them stock trading. It wasn't easy for us to raise you to this age. We've been treating you fairly all these years. We didn't even have a third child just because you were a girl. The Sophia family line has been cut off, but we didn't even blame you. But in reality, the relatives all had eyes, ears, and brains. They had heard bits and pieces about the situation and knew it all too well. This incident caused quite a stir and was known throughout the surrounding neighborhoods. I pretended to be completely desperate and left in despair, looking dejected and downcast. I even suspected that I wasn't their biological daughter. So, this time, I took the opportunity to collect their hair and secretly went to do a paternity test. I thought that if it turned out I wasn't their biological child, I would immediately spend money to find my real parents. Surprisingly, I was indeed their biological daughter. Well, in this regard, I resigned myself to it. After severing ties with them, I left the city and moved to another city to start a new life. Anyway, they were living well now and wouldn't go looking for my whereabouts. As for how long their good life would last, that was uncertain. But I still had people spread the rumor that I had been abducted by creditors, just in case. Because even if the worst happened, if they ever came looking for me one day, I would only provide them with the most basic alimony according to the law and would never give them an extra penny. Before leaving, I found the boss who had bought my bracelet from me. Back then, I had to persuade this boss with great effort to keep the bracelet from me, and I promised to buy it back at double the price later. The bracelet was left by my grandma, one of the few people who had been kind to me when I was young. Buying the bracelet back was my only remaining thought about family affection. I became a shareholder in the rival company of the Jake family, and that company got back on track smoothly. In my past life, that company eventually grew into a strong rival of the Jake Group after many setbacks and made a lot of money. In this life, I helped them snatch several big projects that the Jake Group had their eyes on from time to time. I hoped this company could bring down the Jake Group to relieve the hatred in my heart. Soon, I received good news from my best friend in the city. Sure enough, Jake didn't marry Ava. The news that he was going to have an arranged marriage with another company couldn't be contained and finally reached Ava's ears. At this time, Ava was nearly 7 months pregnant. With a bulky figure and a haggard complexion, Ava went to Jake's place to make a big scene. During the argument, she was accidentally pushed down the stairs by Jake's fiancé, Mason. Naturally, the baby was lost. Fortunately for her, although her uterus was removed, she managed to save her life. My unscrupulous parents also lost money in stock trading. They sold their newly bought house, but they had already sold their old house long ago and had put all the money into stock trading, so they naturally lost it altogether and could only rent a shabby and small place. I heard that the two of them were squeezed into a rental room of just over 10 square meters with no air conditioner or heating, and the transportation was also inconvenient. It was hilarious. Who told them to be so confident? Without my guidance, they actually thought they could make money from stock trading just by themselves with no experience at all, as if they had incredible luck. Of course, they did go to seek refuge with Ava. After all, although Jake had an arranged marriage with someone else, he had given Ava quite a lot of property and real estate before. But Ava was ashamed to have such parents and refused to live with them. It was only after she slipped down the stairs and had her uterus removed that she remembered them and took them in to live with her so they could take care of her. But living with Ava, they also had to endure her bad temper. After all, Ava still had some money in her hands now. After Ava's accident, Jake gave her a large sum of money. But without a uterus, it was impossible for her to enter the Jake family. However, would I let that jerk get away easily on his own? Of course not. I wanted them to be entangled with each other forever and blame each other. It was about time. In my past life, during these few months, the most crucial evidence should have already surfaced, and the Jake Group could no longer escape punishment. I anonymously reported clues about the illegal and criminal activities the Jake Group had been involved in over the years to the police. This was also why Jake conspired with Ava to harm me in my past life. Back then, I accidentally discovered that the Jake family was involved in some shady activities. I tried my best to stop Jake from continuing, but instead, he thought I didn't want to stand on the same side as him and even considered killing me. This time, after I anonymously reported it, Within just a few dozen days, the Jake Group was hit by numerous scandals, and its stock price plummeted. A few days later, following the clues I provided, the Jake Group was directly shut down, and almost all of its properties were frozen. A few more days later, the entire Jake family was taken away from their home by the police. The evidence was conclusive and undeniable. On the other hand, after Jake fell, Ava lost her backer. But she was used to living extravagantly, and her money quickly ran out. At this time, my parents, who had always been overly confident, started suggesting that Ava should also invest in stocks like I did to maintain a high-quality life. Ava had always thought she was much better than me, so she took all her remaining money to invest in stocks. She thought that since I could make money, she could surely make a big profit too. As a result, she lost everything. All the property and real estate Jake had given her were lost in the stock market, and the three of them were forced to move into a shabby and small place again. Only this time, it was unknown when they would be able to move out. At this time, they still wouldn't give up and remembered me. Although they clearly knew they had severed ties with me before and that I had no money but only debts when I left, they did go to inquire about my whereabouts, but unfortunately, no one knew where I was. Everyone said I had been abducted by creditors to pay off debts. Sure enough, money talks. Spending money to spread the rumor that I had been taken away to pay off debts was effective. So they cursed me as a worthless daughter, a useless thing, a waste of their upbringing, and so on, while continuing to be squeezed into the shabby and small place of just over 10 square meters. At this time, I, the so-called worthless daughter and waste of money in their eyes, was in a seaside apartment in the city, looking out at the beautiful blue sea and sky, working hard for my newly started small studio. Every day was full of motivation, full of vitality, embracing a new life.